It was a cold and rainy night. The streets were empty. The wind howled through the trees, and the sound of raindrops hitting the roof was the only music inside the quiet house. John sat alone in his living room, staring at the dark window, feeling the weight of his empty life. Since his wife passed away 2 years ago, the house had become nothing more than walls and silence. He worked during the day, ate simple meals, and then spent his nights sitting alone. Every corner of the house was dusty, every room untouched, yet he had no energy to clean or care. Loneliness was his only companion. But that night, something broke the silence. At first he thought it was just the wind or maybe a stray cat, but then he heard it again. A strange scraping sound, almost like footsteps dragging in the wet mud. He stood up, his heart beating a little faster. The sound grew louder, closer, and then came a soft knock on his front door. It was unusual. Nobody visited him this late, and nobody cared to knock at his door anymore. John hesitated for a moment. He wanted to ignore it, pretend it wasn't there. But the knocking came again. Weak, slow, almost desperate. He sighed, walked to the door and pulled it open. And there she was. At first, he thought it was a homeless girl, thin, dirty, with clothes torn by the rain. Her long hair clung to her face and her eyes shimmered strangely in the dim light. She was shivering, her lips pale, her hands clutching the frame of the door like she could collapse any moment. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling, "just some work, please." John blinked, confused. He wanted to close the door, to send her away. But something in her voice caught him. There was pain in her tone. Not just hunger, but something deeper, something broken. He stepped aside and said, "If you want work, you can clean this place. It's a mess." Her head lifted slightly, and for the first time he saw her eyes clearly. They were not normal, not human. They glowed faintly, like two stars hidden behind fog. But before, he could think too much. She lowered her gaze and nodded. Inside, she moved slowly, carefully. As if afraid of every object in the room, she touched the dusty table, wiped it with her sleeve, and coughed quietly. John brought her an old cloth and pointed to the rooms. "You can start here," he said, though his voice was unsure. She nodded again, still shivering, still silent. And for the next hour, she cleaned with quiet dedication. Her movements were clumsy, almost unnatural. But she tried hard. John watched from the kitchen, wondering who she really was. When she finished, he gave her some money, a few bills from his wallet. Her hand trembled as she accepted them. She whispered, "Thank you. I will not forget this." And then she turned toward the door like she was ready to leave. John should have let her go, but his heart ached as he saw her weak figure in the doorway. Something told him she had nowhere to go, no one waiting for her. Still, he didn't stop her. Loneliness had made him cautious. He closed the door behind her, sat back in his chair, and told himself it was nothing. Just a poor stranger, nothing more. The night deepened, the rain stopped, and silence returned to the house. John finally drifted into sleep. But hours later, he woke with a strange feeling, a heavy weight in the air. The room was dark, the shadows thick. He turned his head slowly and froze. She was there, the same girl he had sent away. She was in his bed, lying quietly, her glowing eyes fixed on him in the darkness. No words, no sound, only her unblinking gaze meeting his. His chest tightened, fear and shock mixing together. Why was she here? How did she get inside? And why did those glowing eyes seem less human and more otherworldly? The silence was unbearable. John opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The girl finally whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Please, don't send me away." And with those words, the nightmare truly began. The morning sun pushed weak light through the curtains. John opened his eyes slowly, still unsure if last night had been real or only a dream. But then he turned, and the truth was there. The strange girl curled on the edge of his bed, still watching him with those faintly glowing eyes. She had not moved, not even once through the long hours of night. It was as if she had been waiting for him to wake, John sat up quickly, his chest tight, his voice sharp. "Why are you here? I told you to leave." The girl flinched, pulling, her arms around herself like a frightened child. Her voice was soft, shaking. "I had no place, no shelter. Please, let me stay for a while." John rubbed his face, torn between anger and pity. Every part of him wanted to push her out, to close the door and never see her again. But something in her expression stopped him. Something desperate, something lonely, something that mirrored his own emptiness. He sighed heavily. "Fine, but only today, you understand? Just today." She nodded quickly, almost gratefully. She followed him into the kitchen, her steps light, too careful. When he placed bread and a cup of water on the table, she stared at it like it was treasure. She ate slowly, like someone who had not touched food in days. But the strange thing was how her skin seemed to warm, the faint blue glow in her veins becoming brighter with every bite. John noticed it, his fork pausing in the air. "What are you?" he whispered without meaning to. Her eyes shot up to meet his. For a long moment, silence filled the kitchen, broken only by the sound of rain dripping from the roof outside. She looked down again, hiding her face behind her tangled hair. "I am nothing. No one," she said quietly. But her trembling hands told a different story. As the hours passed, she moved around the house, trying to clean again. John watched her. Her movements were strange, like she didn't fully understand human things. When she touched the broken lamp in the corner, something impossible happened. Her fingers glowed faintly, and before his eyes, the cracked glass pulled back together. The metal straightened and the lamp flickered with life. John stumbled backward, shocked. "That's not possible," he whispered. The girl looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. "Please, don't tell anyone," she begged. Her secret was out, and there was no denying it now. She was not just a lost homeless girl. She was something else, something alien. John felt his chest tighten, fear wrestling with curiosity. "Who are you really?" he demanded. Tears welled in her strange, glowing eyes. "I lost everything," she said, her voice breaking. "My people, my world, gone. I have no one left. No home, no family." Her words struck him harder than he expected. He saw the pain, the loneliness, the same emptiness that haunted him since his wife's death. But before he could answer, a sharp sound cut through the fragile silence. The screech of tires outside. John froze, moving toward the window. A black van had stopped near his house, its engine still running. Two men in dark coats stepped out, scanning the street with sharp eyes. They looked like hunters, not neighbors. They were searching for someone. The girl stiffened, her body trembling. Her glowing eyes widened in terror as she whispered, "They found me." John turned toward her, confusion rising. "Who are they? Why are they looking for you?" But she shook her head quickly, pressing herself against the wall. "Please, you must not let them see me. They will take me. They will kill me." John's mind raced. This was not his problem, not his fight. He had only wanted a quiet life. But now danger had arrived at his door, danger connected to the strange girl he had allowed inside. He could throw her out, pretend he knew nothing save himself, or he could hide her, risk everything. His heart pounded as the knock came again, louder this time, not weak like hers last night, but heavy, demanding. The men outside called. "Open the door, sir. Routine check. Have you seen anything unusual in the area?" John looked at the girl trembling in the shadows, her glowing eyes pleading with him. In that moment, he felt the weight of a choice that could change everything. He walked toward the door slowly, his hands shaking. The men outside waited, their shadows stretching across his porch. He glanced back one last time. She was staring at him, silent tears running down her strange face. "Please," she mouthed, "don't give me away." John swallowed hard, his hand on the door handle, and as he pulled it open, his voice came out calm but heavy. "No, officer," he said. "I haven't seen anyone unusual tonight." But inside, his heart screamed with fear. For now he was part of her secret and there was no turning back. The knock on the door still echoed in John's ears. His hand trembled slightly as he closed it, forcing a calm smile toward the two men standing outside. They wore long black coats, their faces sharp and expressionless, their eyes scanning every shadow as though they could see through walls. The taller one leaned forward, his voice flat. "We are looking for someone, sir. A dangerous runaway. Have you noticed anything strange in this neighborhood?" John shook his head quickly, his throat dry. "No, nothing unusual here, just a quiet night." The men exchanged a look, as if weighing his words. One of them pulled out a small device, a scanner that hummed softly, its light sweeping across the porch. The girl inside held her breath, pressed tightly against the wall, praying the light would not find her. The shorter man stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "You live alone?" "Yes," John answered firmly, his voice low but steady. "Just me." The man studied his face for a moment longer, then gave a cold nod. "If you see anything, report immediately. It is a matter of national security." Without waiting for a reply, they turned and walked back to the van, their boots splashing in the shallow puddles. The engine roared, and the black vehicle disappeared into the wet night. John shut the door and leaned against it, his body heavy with relief and fear. The girl stepped out from the shadows, her glowing eyes wide, tears trembling on her lashes. You saved me," she whispered, her voice fragile. John turned to her sharply. "What's going on? Who are they? And why are they hunting you?" She lowered her gaze, wrapping her arms around herself. "They are hunters," she said softly. "Sent to erase what is left of my kind. I thought I escaped them, but they never stop." Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I am the last. If they take me, my people will be gone forever." John stared at her, struggling to believe the words. The last of her kind, hunted like an animal, hiding in his house. He rubbed his forehead, pacing across the room. "This is madness. I should have told them, I should—" But his voice broke off when he looked back at her. She was trembling, not with anger but with fear. Her eyes pleaded with him in silence. For a long moment the house was filled with nothing but the sound of rain dripping outside. Finally John sighed deeply. "You can stay, for now, but you need to tell me everything. No more secrets." The girl nodded slowly. "My name. It cannot be spoken in your tongue, but you may call me Lyra," she whispered. "I came from far away across the stars. When my world fell to war, my people scattered, some captured, some destroyed. I ran. I survived. But I am alone now." Her eyes glowed brighter, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I never wanted to bring danger to you, but I had nowhere else to go." John felt something stir in his chest. Sympathy, anger, confusion, all tangled together. He wanted to push her away, to free himself from this impossible situation. But the thought of her running back into the storm, hunted and helpless, gnawed at him. For years he had been alone in his grief, but now, for the first time, someone else needed him, and that feeling was hard to ignore. Before he could respond, the silence outside shattered. A sharp noise. The screech of brakes. John rushed to the window, his blood running cold. The same black van had returned, only this time there were two more behind it. Doors slammed, heavy boots hit the ground, and voices barked orders in the dark. "They're searching the houses," John muttered under his breath. His chest tightened as he saw beams of flashlight sweeping through the neighbors' yards, moving closer and closer to his home. Lyra gasped, her entire body shaking. "They will come here, they always do. They can smell me, feel me." John grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Then you need to hide now. Where can I—" But before he could finish, the lights flashed across his windows, and a fist pounded hard against the door. "Open up! Security check!" The pounding grew louder, the hunter shouting, "Step aside, sir. By law we must search your property." John's mind raced. If they came inside, they would find her, no matter where she hid. Lyra's breathing quickened, panic flooding her eyes. "They will take me, they will kill me, please, John." His heart hammered against his chest. There was no time left, no clever excuse, no way to keep both of them safe. He had to choose: betray her and save himself, or protect her and face the hunters head-on. John clenched his fists, his jaw tight, and as the front door shook under another furious knock, he whispered to her, "Stay behind me, whatever happens." The lock clicked, the door began to open, and the hunters stepped inside, their weapons gleaming under the dim light. The hunters stormed into the house. Their heavy boots crushed the silence, their flashlights sweeping across the living room. John stood still, his fists tight, forcing his face to remain calm. Behind him, hidden in the shadows of the kitchen, Lyra crouched low, holding her breath. Every second felt like an eternity. The leader of the hunters scanned John with sharp eyes. "You seem nervous," he said coldly. "Perhaps you are hiding something." John forced a tired laugh. "I live alone. What could I possibly hide?" "Look around. Just dust and silence." The men searched every corner, opening doors, pushing aside furniture, shining lights under the stairs. Lyra pressed her hand against her mouth, trembling so hard she thought they could hear her heartbeat. When one of the hunters passed dangerously close, his flashlight brushing against the kitchen wall, John coughed loudly, stepping forward. "Do you always tear through homes like this? Or is this special treatment?" The man glared at him, then turned away, muttering to his partner. Minutes felt like hours, but finally the hunters pulled back. The leader gave John one last long stare. "If you see her, report immediately. She is not what she looks like. She is dangerous." With that warning they left, the door slamming behind them. Engines roared outside, and the vans rolled away into the night. John leaned against the wall, his body shaking with relief. Lyra crept out slowly, her glowing eyes filled with tears. "You risked everything for me," she whispered. "Why?" John looked at her, his jaw tight. "Maybe I'm just tired of losing people," he muttered almost to himself. From that night, something began to change. The silence of the house no longer felt so heavy. Lyra stayed, moving through the rooms, carefully, always ready to vanish at the slightest sound. But with each passing day, the distance between them grew smaller. John taught her small human habits: how to cook, how to sit at the table, how to hold a cup without trembling. She watched him with quiet fascination, copying his movements, sometimes clumsy but always eager to learn. One evening, when the power flickered and the old heater broke, Lyra placed her hands on the machine. The glow from her fingers spread through the metal and the heater hummed back to life. John stared in wonder. "You can fix anything," he whispered. Her eyes lowered, sadness softening her glow. "I was never meant to fight or destroy," she said. "My people built, healed, created." But the hunters took it all away. The more she revealed, the more John saw her not as an alien but as a broken soul. One night, as they sat by the dim lamp, she spoke softly. "I miss the sound of my world, the rivers that glowed under our moons, the voices of my kin singing together. Now it is all gone." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, John reached out, placing a hand gently over hers. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly. Her eyes met his, shimmering with both sorrow and fragile hope. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened. The emptiness in John's life began to fade, replaced by quiet moments, her laughter when she tried human food, her curiosity at books she could barely understand, her silent comfort when he sat staring at old photographs of his wife. They were two broken lives slowly stitching together, but the outside world had not forgotten. Every day the news grew louder, reports of strange lights, warnings of a dangerous fugitive, orders to remain alert. Posters appeared on street corners. Alien threat. Report. Immediately John tore them down whenever he could, anger boiling inside him. "They know you're still here," he muttered one evening. "It's only a matter of time." Lyra looked at him sadly. "You should not risk yourself for me, John. They will destroy you too." He shook his head firmly. "Let them try. I already lost one family, I won't lose another." The words hung heavy between them, and Lyra's glowing eyes filled with tears she could not hold back. That night, John dreamed of fire and smoke, of hunters breaking down the door, of Lyra being dragged away screaming. He woke, in a cold sweat, only to find her sitting near the window staring at the stars. "What are you looking for?" he asked softly. "My home," she whispered. "But it is too far now." The silence between them was broken by a sudden noise outside, the crackle of a loudspeaker. John rushed to the window, his blood freezing. Outside, military trucks filled the street, soldiers moving house to house. The voice on the speaker was cold and sharp. "The fugitive is near. We will search every home, no exceptions." John turned to Lyra, his face pale. "They're here again," he said, his voice shaking. Lyra stood slowly, her glowing skin brightening in fear. "They will not stop until they take me," she whispered. "And this time, they will not leave you alive." The pounding of fists echoed on the neighbor's door. John clenched his fists, his mind racing. The bond that had grown between them was no longer just trust. It was survival. And now survival meant standing together. The soldiers were getting closer, and the walls of John's house suddenly felt much too thin. The pounding of boots outside grew louder. The soldiers moved house to house, their voices carrying through the cold night. John closed the curtains quickly, his heart hammering. Lyra stood in the center of the room, trembling, her glow dimming like a dying flame. "They are getting closer," she whispered. John forced a deep breath. "We'll keep quiet. They'll pass." But his voice carried no confidence, only fear. Through the thin walls, he could hear the officers speaking with his neighbors. Questions, threats, promises of reward for anyone who gave information. John's stomach twisted when he thought of Mrs. Callahan next door. She was the type to watch every shadow, to gossip about every detail. She had probably noticed the strange figure slipping in and out of his house. One word from her and everything would be over. Lyra's voice broke into his thoughts, soft and pleading. "John, if they come, if you must, you can give me to them." John turned sharply, his eyes wide. "No, don't you dare say that." Her glowing eyes filled with sorrow. "You saved me once, but I cannot ask you to lose your life for mine. It is not fair." He stepped closer, his jaw tight. "Listen to me, Lyra, I won't betray you, not now, not ever." His words were firm, but inside his chest, doubt gnawed like fire. What if they stormed in? What if they dragged him away too? He had lived a quiet life for so long, and now everything he knew was falling apart. The knock came sooner than he hoped. 3 sharp strikes against his door. "Open up! Security inspection." John's hands shook, but he forced himself to open it slowly. 2 soldiers stood outside, their eyes cold and suspicious. "Strange reports from this street," one said. "People have seen unusual lights, odd noises, even glowing figures. Anything you'd like to share, sir?" John swallowed hard, shaking his head. "Just me here, nothing strange, just an old man in an old house." The soldier narrowed his eyes, scanning John's face for any crack of truth. Then he leaned closer and said, "If you know something, and keep it hidden, the punishment will fall on you too, remember that." When they left, John closed the door with shaking hands. Lyra stepped out from the shadows, her face pale. "They suspect you," she whispered. John nodded grimly. "Yes, and if the neighbors talk, it will be worse." That evening, as he sat staring at the flickering TV, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number. "We know you are hiding. Her. Tell us and you will be rewarded. Stay silent and you will be punished." John stared at the words, his chest heavy. The offer of safety, of reward. Whispered temptations he wanted to ignore. But he was only human. And fear was louder than courage. Lyra noticed his silence, the way his hands gripped the phone. "John," she said softly, "you must choose. Either betray me and live free, or keep me and suffer with me." Her voice cracked, her glowing eyes dim with sadness. She pulled something from the folds of her clothes, a small, strange object. It pulsed faintly with blue light, like a heart beating. "This Belong to my people, she said, placing it in his hands. If I die, you must keep this safe. It carries what is left of us. It is more valuable than me. John stared at the artifact, feeling its faint hum in his palm. I don't want things, he said, his voice breaking. I want you safe. But even as he spoke, the weight of her gift pressed down on him. It was more than responsibility. It was a promise he hadn't asked for. The night dragged on, tension thick in the air. Every sound outside felt like a threat, every flicker of light a warning. Lyra sat quietly, her glow faint, as if her spirit itself was fading. John kept pacing, torn between fear and loyalty. The message on his phone burned in his pocket like fire. Then, without warning, the window shattered, glass rained across the floor, and a burst of light filled the room. Shadows moved outside, dark figures climbing through the broken frame. The hunters had returned, not with questions this time, but with weapons raised. John grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her behind him. Her glow brightened with terror, tears spilling from her eyes. They found us, she gasped. They will not leave us alive this time. John's chest tightened, but he stood firm. No more running, he whispered. If they want you, they'll have to go through me. The hunters stepped inside, their black eyes fixed on Lyra, and the air crackled with danger. The shattered glass crunched under the hunters' boots as they stepped into the room. Their weapons gleamed in the dim light, each barrel aimed at John and Lyra. John's body shook, but he stood in front of her like a shield, his fists clenched though he knew his hands were useless against guns. Move aside, one of the hunters ordered coldly. She is not yours to protect. John's voice came out rough but steady. You'll have to kill me first. The hunters didn't hesitate. They raised their rifles higher. In that instant, Lyra's fear broke into something else. Her glow, once dim and trembling, flared with sudden light. Blue energy spread across her skin like fire under glass. The hunters opened fire. The sound tore through the house, deafening and violent. John ducked, pulling Lyra down with him, but the bullets never reached them. A shimmering barrier of light had formed, spreading from Lyra's body. The bullets bounced off, sparking in every direction. The hunters cursed, firing again, but nothing broke through. Lyra gasped, her hands glowing, brighter. I cannot hold it long, she whispered, her voice shaking with strain. John grabbed her arm. Then we run. But before they could move, a hunter hurled a device, a small black sphere that cracked against the wall. It exploded with fire, flames racing across the wooden floor. The living room erupted in heat and smoke. The house, John's only home, began to burn. Lyra coughed, her barrier flickering as smoke filled her lungs. John pulled her toward the back door, but another hunter blocked the way, swinging a metal baton crackling with electricity. John lunged at him, adrenaline surging. The weapon struck his shoulder, pain tearing through him, but he didn't stop. He tackled the man, slamming him into the wall. The rifle clattered to the ground. For a brief moment, John felt strength he hadn't known in years. Not for himself, but for her. Lyra stumbled behind him, her light blazing. The fire spread faster, climbing the curtains, swallowing the furniture. The house groaned as the heat ate through its frame. John's memories, every photograph, every piece of his old life turned to ash. But all he could think of was keeping Lyra alive. 2 more hunters stormed in, their eyes black with hunger. They shouted into radios, calling reinforcements. Lyra fell to her knees, pressing her hands to the ground. Blue energy surged through, the floorboards cracking the wood. A shockwave rippled outward, throwing the hunters back with violent force. John stared in disbelief. You're more powerful than they know, he whispered. Lyra shook her head, tears cutting through the soot on her face. No, I was never meant to fight, but they give me no choice. Her glow pulsed brighter, burning through the smoke. John felt the heat of the flames against his skin, but her light kept pushing the fire back. For the first time he realized she wasn't just surviving, she was protecting him too. Sirens wailed outside now, more trucks arriving. Through the smoke-stained window, John saw soldiers surrounding. The street, dozens, maybe more, weapons pointed at the house. "This is it," he muttered. "They've brought an army." Lyra grabbed his hand, her glowing fingers warm against his skin. "You don't have to stay," she said desperately. "I will fight alone. You can still escape." John shook his head violently. "No, you're not facing this alone, not anymore." Her glowing eyes widened, shimmering with something deeper than fear and something like trust. The roof cracked above them, pieces of burning wood crashing down. The house roared with flames. John coughed hard, his vision blurring from the smoke. But then he felt her arms around him, pulling him close. Her glow engulfed him, wrapping him in light. For a brief moment, the fire couldn't touch him. It was as if she had turned herself into a shield. Outside, the soldiers shouted, preparing to storm in. A loudspeaker boomed, "Surrender the alien and you will be spared." John looked at Lyra, coughing through the smoke. Her answer was clear in her eyes. She would never surrender, not while she had him to protect. The front wall burst inward, soldiers flooding through the flames. John tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. She rose to her feet, her entire body blazing with light. The soldiers froze for a moment, shielding their eyes from the brilliance. John whispered, "Do it, Lyra. Show them who you are." Lyra closed her eyes, her voice breaking as she whispered back, "Then forgive me if this destroys everything." And with a scream that shook the walls, she released her power. Light and fire exploded together, swallowing. The room outside, the soldiers staggered as the house lit up like a star. The night sky burned with blue and red, fire and energy clashing in violent beauty. The ground trembled, windows shattered across the street, and in the heart of it all, John held her hand, refusing to let go. When the light faded for a breathless moment, the house was nothing but smoke and ruin, and above the burning street, dark shapes appeared in the sky, huge ships descending, engines humming with thunder. Lyra's body sagged against John, her voice weak. "They are here, not just hunters, the ones who command them." Her glow dimmed as her knees buckled. John caught her, staring up at the massive ships blotting out. The stars, the real war had arrived. The night sky was no longer dark. It burned with light as massive ships descended, their shadows swallowing the neighborhood. Engines roared like thunder, shaking the ground. Soldiers who had surrounded John's house froze in fear as the great vessels filled the sky above them. The hunters had called their masters, and now the masters had come. John held Lyra in his arms, her body weak, her glow fading. Her voice trembled, barely more than a whisper. "They are not here to capture. They are here to end me." Her words cut through him like a blade. He looked up at the giant ships, his fists tightening. He had already lost too much in his life. He would not lose her too. The soldiers raised their weapons, but none dared fire. The air itself felt heavy as beams of light swept down from the ships, scanning the ruins of the burning house. A voice thundered across the night, deep and cold. "Return the fugitive, or your world will suffer." Neighbors peeked from windows, terrified. Some whispered prayers. Others shouted for John to give her up. "Hand her over." One man screamed from the street, "You'll kill us all if you don't." John stood tall, Lyra leaning against him. His voice carried through the smoke and fear. "No, she is not your enemy. She is not a threat. She is alive, and she deserves to live." The soldiers turned their weapons on him now. The crowd of neighbors backed away, unwilling to share his fate. To them, he was only a fool protecting a monster. But John didn't care. He remembered the loneliness that had eaten him alive for years. He remembered the first time she had whispered, "Please don't send me away." And he knew in that moment he could never betray her. Lyra looked up at him with tears glowing faintly in her eyes. "You will die for me," she whispered. John shook his head. "No, I will live for you, and if that means fighting them, then so be it." The ships above hummed louder, their weapons glowing. The ground shook as energy built in the sky. Lyra's body trembled, her strength almost gone, but she placed the glowing artifact, the last piece of her people, in John's hands. "If I fall, you must protect this," she said, her voice cracking. John gripped it tight, his chest burning. "I'm not protecting this," he said firmly. "I'm protecting you." The first beam of energy fired from the ship, a searing, Light aimed at them. John braced for the end, but it never came. Lyra screamed, her body bursting into pure light. Her power spread wide, colliding with the weapon's fire. The blast shook the street, tearing roofs from houses. But John stood in the center of it all, shielded by her glow. The crowd gasped as the massive beam split apart. For the first time, the hunters hesitated, their black eyes flickering with fear. Lyra's voice echoed, not just to John, but to everyone watching. You see me as a weapon, but I am more. I am life, and I will not be erased. Her glow spread higher, reaching toward the ships. The air cracked with energy, lightning-like streaks flashing across the sky. The ships trembled, their engines sputtering as her power struck them. John shouted, his voice raw, look at her. She is not our enemy, she is hope. And if one human can stand with her, then all of us can. For a moment, the soldiers wavered. Neighbors who had once called for her capture now stared in awe. They saw not a monster, but a broken soul fighting for life, and they saw a human refusing to abandon her. Something stirred in their hearts, the first spark of defiance against the fear, but power came with a cost. Lyra's body shook violently, her glow flickering. She leaned against John, her strength draining fast. I cannot hold it much longer, she whispered. John gripped her tightly, tears burning his eyes. Then don't hold it for them. Hold it for us. For one last moment. With her final strength, Lyra released a wave of light. It surged upward, swallowing the night sky. The ships cracked, their dark metal splitting under the force. Engines exploded, fire rained down. The hunters screamed as their masters fell, and then silence. The sky cleared. The great ships gone, reduced to ashes drifting among the stars. The street was broken, the houses scorched. But the world was still alive. John fell to his knees, Lyra in his arms. Her glow was fading, her skin pale and fragile. She looked up at him with weak eyes. You gave me a home, she whispered. Her hand touched his cheek gently, her light flickering like the last flame of a candle. And then, it was gone. Her body grew still, her glow vanishing into the night. John held her tightly, his tears falling into her lifeless hair. Around him, silence hung heavy, broken only by the crackle of distant flames. But though she was gone, her gift remained, the artifact pulsing softly in his hand. The last heartbeat of her people, carried by a human who had chosen trust over fear. John stood slowly, his grief heavy, but his resolve stronger. He looked at the soldiers, the neighbors, the broken street, and he spoke, his voice firm. She is gone, but her light lives here, in me, in us, in this world we will not forget. For the first time in years, John did not feel empty. He felt purpose. One human had stood for an alien life, and in doing so, he had changed everything. And that night, under the quiet sky, humanity made its choice.